Apple's M2 lineup of Macs was good, but honestly not great. They're missing a little something that we've been obsessing over for just about the last year, and that's 3nm chip technology from the most important place in the world, a little island named Taiwan. And if you don't understand why it's so important, you will by the end of this video, as I'll be talking about the performance of the M3, M3 Pro, and M3 Max chips. But first, I've got to go through some brand new updates in terms of when each and every M3 Mac will get released, like the M3 MacBook Air, the high-end MacBook Pros, the Mac Studio, Mac Minis, Mac Pro, and maybe even the iMac Pro. Now, what you absolutely need to understand first is that these 3nm chips from TSMC are gonna use brand new technology on new 3nm nodes that are gonna be very expensive, about 25% more expensive than the current 5nm nodes. And because of that, TSMC has been having some serious yield issues, which essentially means how many of the actual 3nm chips or wafers are going to pass inspection and how many they will simply toss out. With the most recent update, only about 55% of the wafers were passing inspection, which is actually quite terrible because Apple needs enough yield for both the A17 chips and M3. And because of that, there was speculation that Apple could delay the release of the M3 chip to next year in the spring, and then that would delay the entire M3 Mac lineup even further. However, it's looking like that actually won't be the case, so let's jump into those new leaks. A couple of weeks back, Mark Gurman reported that Apple is planning an event for October to release some new products, which are most likely going to be the first range of M3 Macs, including potentially the M3 MacBook Air, the MacBook Pro, and M3 iMac. And even better, we got another report from Digitimes that Apple was preparing to launch a new MacBook Pro with a 3nm chip later this year, which is of course the M3 chip, which solidifies Mark Gurman's report. Now at first, I had a hard time believing this because of all of the yield issues, which meant Apple would have a very low supply of chips this fall. But then we received another very important update that changed everything. Apparently, Apple's brand new 15-inch MacBook Air didn't do nearly as well as Apple thought it would in terms of launch sales. Now personally, I thought that this would be the best-selling MacBook right out of the gate because of the large 15-inch display combined with a super thin design and killer $1299 price tag, which was even less expensive than my own estimates. But no, the shipment volume in July was 50% lower than originally estimated. Why? Well, because the entire laptop market is suffering right now due to a downturn in the economy and other factors. So this got me thinking, what if the low yields for Apple's 3nm A17 and M3 chips won't even matter because the demand for laptops right now isn't nearly as high as it was before, so the low supply would be matched with lower demand. Plus, if you think about it, Apple made the smart move of only putting the latest Apple Silicon chips into the Pro model iPhones, so the new iPhone 15 and 15 Plus will continue to use the 5nm A16 chip. So because of those reasons, I actually think that Apple can pull it off and release the first M3 Max this fall after the launch of the iPhone 15 lineup, and that's apparently what Apple suppliers are preparing for right now, including Apple's partnering semiconductor backend houses and test interface specialists, according to a brand new report. And honestly, a launch this fall makes perfect sense since it would be about 1.5 years after the launch of the M2 chip, and that was actually launched 1.5 years after the M1, so the timelines match up perfectly. Now keep in mind, we also had the leak from Mark Gurman back in March that Apple's new M3 iMac was nearing final development and could launch as soon as later this year. So we could potentially have all of the first M3 Macs at the same time in October, including the 13-inch M3 MacBook Air, the 13-inch M3 MacBook Pro, and the 24-inch M3 iMac. However, I think it'll be wise for Apple to delay the iMac until March or before April of next year, alongside the release of the M3 iPad Pro, so that the attention is a bit split up, which is exactly what they did with the first M1 iMac when they released it about 6 months after the very first M1 Macs. Now, I know you're gonna ask about the 15-inch MacBook Air and if that too is getting the M3 chip, but I honestly don't think it's gonna get updated until later next year. But with that said, let's jump into the rest of the M3 Mac lineup, starting with the Macs that'll be packing the M3 Pro and M3 Max chips. Mark Gurman just gave us another big update last Sunday, mentioning that the new 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros will probably launch by the middle of 2024 at the latest, which would be around 1.5 years after the M2 Pro and Max chips launched in January, so it makes perfect sense. And then he also mentioned the Mac Mini with M3 and M3 Pro chips, which he says won't get released until late 2024 at the earliest, which means they'll launch after the high-end MacBook Pros. But in my opinion, they could easily launch at the same time since they're two separate product markets. Now, thankfully, Mark Gurman also confirmed that Apple is working on a brand new iMac with a larger than 30-inch display, but it's still in early development right now, so it likely won't launch until the fall of 2024 or maybe even the spring of 2025. And finally, we have the Mac Studio and Mac Pro, and I believe that these could both launch around either the fall of 2024 or potentially all the way up to the summer of 2025. But at this point, it's really hard to guess. And now, with those release dates out of the way, we can move into the performance part of this video. Jason Cross from Macworld put together some M3 chip lineup performance estimates, and while they're on the conservative side, they actually do make sense because they match up with recent leaks from TechReeve on Twitter, who claims the M3 chip won't be as fast as he previously thought due to Apple toning it down. According to Jason, the M3 chip should sit at around 2873 points in Geekbench 6.1's single-core test, which is a decent jump over the M2, with the M3 Max being a bit faster at 2988. And then moving on to the multi-core test, we're seeing the M3 chip score just over 11,000 points, which puts it a decent bit ahead of the M2, and still even slower than the binned 10-core M2 Pro chip. Now, in my opinion, I personally believe Apple is going to be giving the M3 chip a bigger performance jump in multi-core, potentially even outperforming the binned M2 Pro by just a little bit. But of course, my personal estimations were based on an older leaked A17 chip benchmark, which may not be valid anymore. And then of course, we have the M3 Max chip estimate, which sits at around 16,500 points, which is actually almost as fast as the M1 Ultra chip. And once again, I honestly feel like Apple is going to be giving us a bigger performance boost than this. I feel like the M3 Max should be scoring closer to 18 or 19,000 points with the new 3nm chip technology, since it's going to be a big technical jump over the 5nm chips. But keep in mind that the performance numbers won't be everything, and the big impressive feat of these 3nm chips will actually be the performance per watt, or the ability to stay cool and use less power while hitting these performance numbers. So we should see an increase in battery life as well, and that's what's really exciting. So with that said, hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you did, click that circle above to subscribe for more videos like this one, and definitely check out one of those 2 videos right over there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.